Hello, fellow gardeners. I just wanted to take a minute to show you guys some of the different ways that you can build a new garden, especially for fall gardening. If we're just getting started, there are a lot of options for ways that you can build a bed or garden in the fall. We're going to start off. I'm going to show you what we've got going in our garden, which we have raised stone beds in our garden. So I'm going to flip the camera around and show you what's happening. You can see that we've built raised beds here, so they're higher than ground level, and we hauled in dirt for these, soil from gym dirt. It was garden mix. It was really good soil that we hauled in and filled these beds with. Now, these are pretty high. We elevated them because we had a big slope in our backyard, but you don't have to do them this high. You can do them shorter, even just closer to ground level. So I'm going to take you over here and show you this part of the yard. We've got more closer to ground level beds that we dug out the grass, and it's especially important if you're dealing with Bermuda to get every little bit of Bermuda grass out. So that's what's going on here right now. We've got a load of dirt that we've sorted all of the rocks and weeds and particularly little bits of Bermuda out of, and we're dumping it back into the garden space without all the rocks and weeds. So that'll give us good soil as a base for our garden, and then we'll just need to add some stuff to it. Now, the way that we sort out our Bermuda and our rocks is we actually use a sifter that we built with 2x4s, and you can see in there that we put some wire in, some fairly thin wire, about 1/2 inch, I'd say, square, and it's been stapled around the edges or nailed around the edges, just to keep it in the frame. And then we put handles on it, and it fits just right over our wheelbarrow. So you can just take a shovel full of dirt and plop it in there, and then run it through, and it comes out. Not only does it help kind of soften up your dirt for planting, but you end up with well-sifted dirt that doesn't have any big rocks or weeds in it. So that works well. In addition, we put this weed guard around. Since we use stone to border our beds, the Bermuda grass is great at creeping, Bermuda in particular, other things too, but in order to prevent the Bermuda from creeping through those gaps, we went ahead and put a weed guard around the edges of the bed as well on this part, and we're going to do it on the other half as well, just to keep the Bermuda from creeping into the bed as an extra layer of protection. So we'll cut off the extra that's hanging over the edges once we get everything finished here, but right now you can kind of see how that's working. So in addition to the raised beds like we have in our yard with the stone, here's another option for doing a raised bed. And this one's just built out of wood. This is at my friends Christy and Rocky's house, and they just took planks of wood. As you can see, they have it's double stacked. So they just built one rectangle on top of another rectangle, and you can see that they just at the corners just screwed them together and stacked them one on top of the other, and then used support boards on the middle of each side. And this one's really good example because it's nice and tall. So if you build a raised bed like this that's double stacked, then that's a really smart thing to do, because then what you can do, and it looks like this is what they did as well, you can see the remnants of cardboard down here. So if you do a raised bed like this and you have Bermuda grass or weeds growing, then you can just lay down a thick layer of cardboard right on top of your grass and weeds, and then fill in your bed with soil, with good soil, which is what they did. And that prevents you from having to do what we were doing back at my house, where we're digging out the Bermuda and digging out the weeds and having to shovel and clean out all of the soil and sift it first. So this allows you to get going a little bit faster and avoid that part of the process. And you can see they've got some really nice tomatoes in here and a beautiful cantaloupe that looks like it's just about ready. I bet that smells good. And they've done little painted rocks to mark their different crops that they're doing, so that's really fun too. And I noticed too that they've used painter's tape here, which is a good idea, at the end of their rows, just to say what they plan to wear, so that they can watch as it's coming up, just as a reminder for what it is that's coming up. There's another cantaloupe, and you can see it's a nice size, and they've really utilized their space, so that's a good option to get you going quickly and fill it up this fall. Okay, so we saw Christy and Rocky's raised bed, and we also saw my stoned raised beds in the back. And those are a couple of options for building your new garden. In addition, you can just do a ground level bed, which is a little bit easier because it doesn't require you to build anything. But it does require you, if you have that Bermuda, to dig the grass out. Because you just simply cannot garden with Bermuda in your garden. It'll just take over everything. So you have to dig out every single piece of Bermuda if you're gonna do that, but you can do it by the shovelful, and it's not a huge deal. I'm gonna show you an example of a ground level bed, just our front landscaping that we have, just to kind of show you how that works. So this is our front landscaping, and it is a ground level bed. As you can see, it looks a little bit higher than the actual ground, and that's just because we have it built up with mulch. We've mulched on top of the stuff that we've planted. So you can see we used just garden edging. It's just metal edging that you can get at a garden center or Lowe's or Home Depot. And that just protects from the Bermuda creeping into your garden. It slows it down anyway. As you can see, we've got some here that has crept in, and it can still go underneath. You have to really stay on top of it to get it out of your garden. But this is a great way to do just a vegetable garden in addition to a landscape bed like this one, to just build a rectangle or whatever shape you want. You can do something interesting if you want, and then around the border use this metal edging just to keep the weeds at bay and kind of keep your garden contained. So this one's a curvy bed, but like I said, you can do whatever shape you want with landscape edging like this. So that's a good option too. In addition to in-ground beds, if you want to really get going quick and go the really easy route and get a nice area to plant, you can use pots. So I actually have some herbs growing in pots this year. Herbs are an excellent choice for pots, particularly herbs like oregano and mint, because they tend to really take over whatever area they're in. And so if you plant them in a pot, then that keeps them contained and keeps them from stealing space from your other plants. This is one example of the mint that I have planted in a pot. And I guess I have 3 kinds of mint that I'm growing in pots right now. So there's another one, and it does really well. And like I said, it really keeps your mint from taking over, because it will take over if it's in the ground. So they're excellent options for pots. But you can do other herbs in pots too. Basil's really good, chives. Really most herbs you can grow in pots, and there are even like tomatoes, not for fall gardening, but tomatoes and peppers that are designed to go in pots, so they kind of stay smaller and they're well suited to pots. And in the fall, your greens crops are also really good options for pots. So growing lettuce or spinach or things like that in a pot works really well as well.